Finnish researchers have installed the world's first fully working sand battery, which can store green power for months at a time. The developers say this could solve the problem of year-round supply, a major issue for green energy. Using low-grade sand, the device is charged up with heat made from cheap electricity from solar or wind. The sand stores the heat at around 500 C, which can then warm homes in winter when energy is more expensive. Because of climate change and now thanks to the rapidly rising price of fossil fuels, there's a surge of investment in new renewable energy production. But while new solar panels and wind turbines can be quickly added to national grids, these extra sources also present huge challenges. Right now, most batteries are made with lithium and are expensive with a large, physical footprint, and can only cope with a limited amount of excess power.
One of the big challenges now is whether the technology can be scaled up to really make a difference, and will the developers be able to use it to get electricity out as well as heat? The efficiency falls dramatically when the sand is used to just return power to the electricity grid. In many areas of expertise, ranging from music, dance, art, and literature to sports, chess, mathematics, science, and foreign language acquisition, there is abundant evidence that young people differ from one another in their attainments and in the apparent ease with which they achieve them. Even within a family there may be marked differences. For example, a child who struggles at a musical instrument without much success may be overtaken by a younger sibling. It is widely believed that the likelihood of becoming one, exceptionally competent in certain fields depends on the presence or absence of inborn attributes variously labeled talents or gifts or, less often, natural aptitudes. According to an informal British survey, more than 3/4 of music educators who decide which young people are to receive instruction believe that children cannot do well unless they have special innate gifts. Davis 1994. The judgment that someone is talented is believed to help explain, as distinct from merely describing, that person's success. It is also widely assumed that the innate talent that makes it possible for an individual to excel can be detected in early childhood. In reality, however, the causes of truancy and non-attendance are diverse and multifaceted. There are as many triggers of non-attendance as there are non-attenders. Each child has her own unique story, and whilst there may often be certain identifiable factors in common, each non-attending child demands and deserves an individual response, tailored to meet her individual needs. This applies equally to the 14-year-old who fails to attend school because a parent is terminally ill, the overweight 11-year-old who fails to attend because he is embarrassed about changing for PE in front of peers, the 15-year-old who is bored by lessons, and to the 7-year-old who is teased in the playground because she doesn't wear the latest designer label clothes.
A team in the University of London found that people who went with their initial response on a test of visual perception Questions included picking out an anomaly in a pattern of symbols, did better than those who were given more time to ponder. Whereas the subconscious brain recognized a rotated version of the same symbol as different, the conscious brain reasoned that an apple is still an apple whether rotated or not, the researchers on the project concluded. When the subjects had time to engage their higher-level functions instead of relying on their intuitive responses, they were more likely to be wrong.
Imagine a time in the not-too-distant future when your power comes from a seamless mix of renewable energy and traditional sources. It is delivered by a grid that manages thousands of windmills and hundreds of thousands of customers. Computer-controlled, the grid is able to manage instant variations in supply and demand and provides a real-time power balance. Far more complex than anything in existence today, it is called a smart grid. This technology is a new frontier in power supply and seen as a green solution to current outdated management systems. When introduced, smart grids will result in energy savings and will allow consumers a choice in their electricity charges and to be able to select the cheapest time slots.
Umami was first identified in Japan, in 1908, when Dr. Kikanai Ikeda concluded that kombu, a type of edible seaweed, had a different taste than most foods. He conducted experiments that found that the high concentration of glutamate in kombu was what made it so tasty. From there, he crystallized monosodium glutamate, MSG, the seasoning that would become popular the world over. Decades later, umami became scientifically defined as one of the 5 individual tastes sensed by receptors on the tongue. Then in 1996, a team of University of Miami researchers studying taste perception made another breakthrough. For an authentic approach, researchers built various types of equipment failures into the grid to test the system. And it works.
They discovered separate taste receptor cells in the tongue for detecting umami. Before then, the concept was uncharted. Up until our research, the predominant wisdom in the scientific community was that umami was not a separate sense. It was just a combination of the other 4 qualities such as salty, sweet, bitter, sour, explained Dr. Stephen Roper, the University of Miami physiology and biophysics professor who helped zero in on the taste along with Nirupa Chowdhury, the team's lead researcher. Without an actual grid to conduct research on, Professor Wu has had to design a simulated laboratory including input from theoretical wind generators and solar panels to feed into a constantly operating system. The practice of giving storms personal names appears to have originated with Clement Wragg, an Australian meteorologist who in the 1890s entertained himself by naming storms after women, mythical figures, and politicians that he didn't like. The modern system of using personal names developed during World War II, when meteorologists began using women's names, often those of wives or girlfriends, instead of cumbersome designations based on latitude and longitude. Short and quickly understood,
Names were easier to transmit over the radio and easier to keep straight if there was more than one storm in a given area. The system was formalized in 1953 when the National Weather Service put together an alphabetical list of female names to be used for storms in the Atlantic Basin.
Students at the University of Leicester have recently whizzed up a storm of eco-friendly smoothies. This comes as part of a week of events aimed at promoting environmental initiatives on campus. A range of events and activities were organized by the University Environment Team and the Students' Union to encourage students to waste less, recycle more, travel sustainably and save energy to contribute to the university's target of cutting its carbon footprint by 60% by the year 2020. The highlight of the week was a cycle-powered smoothie maker. Students rescued fruit from Leicester Market which would otherwise have been thrown away and salvaged it to create delicious smoothies. No electricity was used as the fruit was whizzed up in a blender attached to the back of a bike pedaled by enthusiastic student volunteers.
In a sustainable world that is achievable in the near future, water and related resources are managed in support of human well-being and ecosystem integrity in a robust economy. Sufficient and safe water is made available to meet every person's basic needs, with healthy lifestyles and behaviors easily upheld through reliable and affordable water supply and sanitation services, in turn supported by equitably extended and efficiently managed infrastructure. Water resources management, infrastructure and service delivery are sustainably financed.
There are so many reasons why, from fast food marketing to agriculture subsidies, but one contributing factor is the slow death of cooking, and the rise of the restaurant meal. Americans now spend more on food at restaurants than they do at grocery stores, but restaurant food tends to have even less fiber than the food we would otherwise eat at home. One problem seems to be that restaurant meals aren't typically loaded with two of the best sources of fiber, unprocessed fruits and vegetables. A revealing study from 2007, in which researchers interviewed 41 restaurant executives, showed that restaurants think fruits and vegetables are too expensive to feature prominently on the menu, and 61% said profits drive menu selections.
A massive tow truck worked Saturday to remove the remains of a burned-out oil tanker that exploded in a giant fireball overnight near the capital of Sierra Leone. Reuters' David Doyle has more. Deputy Health Minister Amara Jambai said the death toll currently stands at 99, with more than 100 people being treated in hospitals and clinics across the capital, Freetown. In a video from the scene shared online, the head of the National Disaster Management Agency, Brima Biosizi, said, "We've got so many casualties, burnt corpses," adding, "It's a terrible, terrible accident." Freetown's mayor said the extent of the damage from Friday's explosion was not yet known, adding that police and her deputy were at the scene to assist disaster management officials.
UNICEF is warning that schools in Haiti are increasingly at the mercy of gangs, with children becoming targets of robbery or ransom. The agency said Tuesday at least 7 schools in the capital of Port-au-Prince have been forced to pay unidentified gangs in exchange for security in the past 2 months, and that additional institutions have also been threatened. The warning comes days after authorities said gang members killed a university professor they had recently abducted. In addition, U.S. and Haitian authorities are still trying to secure release of 17 missionaries from a U.S. religious organization who were kidnapped on October 16 near the capital.
Catherine Muse does not meet bohemian, hippie parents in her line of work. Typically one or both of the parents she sees work in the City of London. Professionals seek professionals, she says. Originally a nanny, Muse is now a parenting consultant, advising couples privately on changing their child's behavior, as well as doing corporate seminars for working parents. Her clients find they are unprepared for the chaos and unpredictability that having a child can entail. Parents are getting older, they have been in control their whole lives and been successful. Suddenly a baby turns up and life turns on its head. Nicknamed the 3-day nanny, of her pledge to fix behavioral problems in children under the age of 12 within 3 days, she is filming a new Channel 4 television series demonstrating her techniques. The role of the parenting consultant, distinct from that of a nanny, has developed, she says, as people are used to buying in expertise, such as personal trainers or, in her case, parenting advice.
Spanish is spoken by more than 300 million people in over 20 countries and is rapidly becoming one of the most popular choices for language learners around the world. A popular course for beginners, Sueños World Spanish is designed to meet the varied needs of adult learners, whether learning at home or in a class. From the very beginning, it encourages you to develop your listening and speaking skills with confidence and provides many opportunities to practice reading in Spanish. Using the extensive range of media available, from the course book to the audio CDs or cassettes, to the popular accompanying television series and free online activities, Sueños World Spanish can help you reach the equivalent level of a first qualification, such as GCSE. The presentation will cover copyright's position as one of the intellectual property rights and how it differs from other intellectual property rights. It will give an overview of what copyright protects as well as what may be done with copyright-protected works without permission under permitted acts. It is by manipulating the restricted acts through licensing arrangements that rights owners establish and exploit commercial markets. In contrast to commercial markets, the growth of open source and open content licensing models has challenged established business models. The presentation gives a brief commentary on 2 of the more prominent open licensing frameworks, the GNU Creative Commons licenses.
The speed of sound, otherwise known as Mach 1, varies with temperature. At sea level on a standard day, the temperature is 59 degrees Fahrenheit, and Mach 1 is approximately 761 mph. As the altitude increases, the temperature and speed of sound both decrease until about 36,000 feet, after which the temperature remains steady until about 60,000 feet. Within that 36,000 to 60,000 foot range, Mach 1 is about 661 miles per hour. Because of the variation, it is possible for an airplane flying supersonic at high altitude to be slower than a subsonic flight at sea level. The transonic band, the sound barrier, extends from around Mach 0.8, when the first supersonic shock waves form on the wing, to Mach 1.2, when the entire wing has gone supersonic. Individual human beings are relatively powerless creatures, no match for lions or bears. It's what they can do as groups that has enabled them to take over the planet. These groupings, corporations, religions, states are now part of a vast network of interconnected information flows. Finding points of resistance, where smaller units can stand up to the waves of information washing around the globe, is becoming harder all the time.
Used in a variety of courses in various disciplines, asking the right questions helps students bridge the gap between simply memorizing or blindly accepting information, and the greater challenge of critical analysis and synthesis. Specifically, this concise text teaches students to think critically by exploring the components of arguments, issues, conclusions, reasons, evidence, assumptions, language, and on how to spot fallacies and manipulations and obstacles to critical thinking in both written and visual communication. It teaches them to respond to alternative points of view and develop a solid foundation for making personal choices about what to accept and what to reject.
First, the scientific community that studies climate change is quietly panic-stricken, because things are moving much faster than they expected. Greenhouse gas emissions are going up faster than predicted, both from industrializing countries in Asia and from melting permafrost in Siberia and Canada. The Arctic sea ice is melting so fast that the whole ocean may be ice-free in late summer in 5 years' time. Most climate scientists now see last year's report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, whose forecasts are used by most governments for planning purposes, as a purely historical document. Second, the biggest early impact of global warming will be on the food supply, both locally and globally. When the global average temperature hits 1.5 degrees hotter, and it will, the carbon dioxide already in the atmosphere commits us to that much warming, some countries will no longer be able to feed their people. Others, further from the equator, will still have enough food for themselves, but none to spare. Short-term memory, SMT, can hold information anywhere between 15 to 30 seconds. According to Miller's Magical Number 7, 1956, short-term memory has a limited capacity, being able to store 5 to 9 items simultaneously. However, if we hear concepts or ideas repeatedly in an audio form, we can acoustically encode the information. It is a process referred to as rehearsal, thereby committing it to our long-term memories.
As digitalization and smart automation progress, many will see their jobs altered. Advances in automation technologies will mean that people will increasingly work side by side with robots, smart automation, and artificial intelligence. Businesses will look for employees who are good at the tasks that smart automation struggles to do and that add value to the use of smart automation. In the past, technological progress has had a positive impact on our society, increasing labor productivity, wages, and prosperity. Right now, a new technological wave of digitalization and smart automation, combinations of artificial intelligence, robotics, and other technologies, is fundamentally transforming the way we work, at an unprecedented pace. For example, data analytics, the Internet of Things, and drones are already used in many industries to make production processes better, faster, and cheaper. We already see shifts in the structure of employment, in industries, tasks, educational levels, and skills.
Computer viruses have been a fact of life at least since the 1980s, if not before. They can cause companies to lose hours of working time, and they can also spread panic among computer users everywhere. There are, however, several distinct types of computer infection, all loosely referred to as viruses, and they each work in a slightly different way. A particularly nasty one is the worm, which is a program designed to sneak its way into an entire computer network and reproduce itself over and over again. Then there is the Trojan, which strictly speaking isn't a virus, but a piece of software that appears to do one thing, but actually does something malicious instead.
When the unsuspecting operator introduces it into the computer, the alien program will take over the machine. With Trojans, you have to be particularly careful because they can often be introduced by way of a message advertising an antivirus product. So what motivates someone to introduce a virus into the computer systems of innocent victims? Perhaps it's simply the desire to prove that it can be done. Or because it gives the kind of pleasure you get from solving a difficult problem. Nowadays, people protect their computers with all sorts of security software, so it takes considerable skill to break through all the defenses and introduce a virus. The primary goal for this year-long campaign, founded by the English lawyer Peter Benenson and a small group of writers, academics and lawyers including Quaker peace activist Eric Baker, was to identify individual prisoners of conscience around the world and then campaign for their release. In early 1962, the campaign had received enough public support to become a permanent organization and was renamed Amnesty International. Under British law, Amnesty International was classed as a political organization and therefore excluded from tax-free charity status. To work around this, the Fund for the Persecuted was established in 1962 to receive donations to support prisoners and their families.
The name was later changed to the Prisoners of Conscience Appeal Fund and is now a separate and independent charity which provides relief and rehabilitation grants to prisoners of conscience in the UK and around the world. Amnesty International has, since its founding, pressured governments to release those persons it considers to be prisoners of conscience. Governments, conversely, tend to deny that the specific prisoners identified by Amnesty International are, in fact, being held on the grounds Amnesty claims. They allege that these prisoners pose genuine threats to the security of their countries. The concept of prisoners of conscience became a controversy around Nelson Mandela's imprisonment. Nissan will overhaul the inspection process for its Japan-destined vehicles for the first time in decades as the carmaker seeks to address a widening inspection scandal that has forced it to suspend production for the domestic market. The company said on Thursday that unauthorized workers had been certifying vehicles set for sale in the Japanese market, even after the company announced the recall of nearly 1.2 million cars earlier this month over the same issue. With investors increasingly concerned about Japan's adherence to standards, concerns that were most recently inflamed by the Kobe steel data falsification scandal, the news pushed Nissan shares down 1.6% on Friday, and also weighed on the prices of its suppliers. Hiroto Saikawa, Nissan's chief executive, pledged drastic measures to deal with the problem, namely the suspension of vehicle production for the home market at all 6 factories in Japan run by the company and its affiliate, Nissan Shitai.
The heart functions as a pump at the center of the circulatory system. In humans, it is located in the chest cavity, between the lungs, a bit to the left. The heart consists of 4 chambers surrounded by a very strong muscular wall, the myocardium. The upper chambers, the right and left atria, receive blood entering the heart, and the lower chambers, the right and left ventricles, pump the blood out of the heart, via the pulmonary and the systemic circulatory systems. The 2 systems work as follows. Blood from the body enters the right atrium, is passed into the right ventricle, and from there is propelled through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. In the lungs, the blood releases carbon dioxide and absorbs oxygen and is then transported back to the heart into the left atrium. From here it passes into the left ventricle, which pumps the oxygenated blood around the body.